Global producers, distributors and rights holders, why are you waiting for license fee payments from your productions, both new and back catalogue? Pipe buys your entertainment receivables and turns it into upfront capital immediately. Pipe can help you pull forward up to 5 years worth of contracted license fees from all the major streamers and broadcasters. So you can use the capital to produce more, acquire more, finance more, and grow your business on your own terms. Sign up today at pipe.com/entertainment. That's pipe.com/entertainment and start fast forwarding your receivables now.
TellyCast, the TV industry news review.
Hi, I'm Justin Crosby and welcome to this week's TellyCast. We're back in France this week for Sunnyside of the Dock, where factual TV producers, distributors and networks are coming together to pitch new projects and find co-production partners for tomorrow's documentaries. My guests on the show are Mikael Osterby from Swedish public broadcaster SVT and Krishan Arora, consultant for SBS Australia. They're coming right up on this week's TellyCast. My first guest on this week's Sunnyside of the Dock special, and indeed we're sat literally on the dock of the bay, aren't we, Krishan? It's Krishan Arora, International Content Consultant for SBS Australia. Welcome to TellyCast, Krishan.
Hi, very nice to be here. As you say, sat on the dockside in lovely La Rochelle.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You know, it's common to all TV industry events, really.
Sunshine and deck chairs.
Yeah, exactly. What could be better? So, Krishan, tell us about your role for SBS. So you're an international content consultant. What does that consist of?
I'm basically the international bit of SBS. We're Sydney-based with an office in Melbourne as well, or different offices in Melbourne. You know, that's where the channel is. But as a broadcaster, about 80% globally of all of the things that we show on the different channels and platforms are acquired, pre-bought, co-produced with other parts of the world. You know, there's American content, there's a lot of UK content, and then there is everywhere else, particularly in Europe, because what we're trying to do on SBS is show programmes, and we would say the best of programming from the places that our audience comes from. And we have big Italian audiences, Italian people of Italian heritage in Australia. There's a big French community in Melbourne in particular. Also in Melbourne, there's a large Lebanese community, you know, and we are doing our best to find quality programs, in a way, whatever the genre, which both reflect that culture, but also speak to the whole of the Australian audience. It's quite ambitious, I guess. We've been going for 40 years, evolving the mission, I guess, but the principle remains the same. Australia's a multicultural society, it's a multilingual society. The television needs to reflect that, and that's what we try and do.
Well, that's really interesting, because my assumption was always in Australia you'd probably be looking for mainly English-speaking content, and that would be the vast majority of the content. So can you give us a rough idea of what sort of content plays well on SBS then, when it comes to both genres, but also, you know, where it's made and where it comes from?
Yeah, I mean, look, half of everything that goes out on SBS is in a language other than English. And when I say in a language, it means that we're showing original language with subtitles. So we have a world movies channel with a lot of non-English speaking films. We have a drama. We show drama on the main channels, but we also show drama on a big VOD service, AVOD in fact, SBS On Demand. And that is all original language subtitles. You know, we're often not buying the dubs because we don't want people to buy the dubs. We want people to see them in the original language. So we're buying those German language or French or whatever language rights. When it comes to factual programs, that can be slightly more challenging if we were to buy something made in Germany about German history with entirely German-speaking experts. We do that. And I think a lot of producers and distributors know this. If you can make something feel international by If you've got English-speaking experts, you put them up the front. Obviously, you would replace the narration. We might replace the narration with a different kind of voice if the voice doesn't work for us. There are ways of leading an audience in to those programs which can come from somewhere that they're not familiar with by giving them, that English-speaking feel, I guess.
Okay. How many Sunnyside of the Docks editions have you been at then?
Well, I'm that experienced that I've been to not just the Sunnysides here in La Rochelle on the Atlantic coast, but also, I suppose it's the original. It was in Marseille, set up in Marseille at the end of the last millennium, actually, and went to 2 or 3 of them there, and it moved here in, I'm pretty sure, 2007, and has been here obviously ever since. So yes, I've been to most of them actually. Used to work for them for a bit, helping them out, and because the international factual marketplace is sort of my speciality, I suppose.
But there's lots of buying and selling going on here, and there's a large market aspect to the event, as well as the seminars and the and everything else that's going around it. The Pixie Festival is running in parallel with it. I'm going to go and check out some VR experiences in a little while. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're looking for to acquire for SBS?
It's interesting that you say sort of buying and selling. I think Sunnyside would see itself very much as a co-production market, and that is maybe more to your British viewers not so familiar as it is to French or German or Spanish or Italian or Danish producers who are used to having or even Australian actually, having sort of a lower participation from their national broadcaster, and then needing to co-produce or pre-sell rights to the shows to get it made. So typically in a French production, you'll be getting between 30 and 45% only from the broadcaster, depending on the broadcaster, depending on their rights position. You would then get national subsidies. In France, it's the CNC, regional subsidies from this region or the region of Rhône-Alpes around Marseille, other funds, and then you'd also be looking for pre-buys from other territories, and then possibly adding EU media funding to that. It's a very complicated package, but this is the sort of place where those conversations and deals happen. And when people are pitching, there are pitching sessions at Sunnyside, 5 of them, I think, throughout the week. And that's what people are looking for. They've kind of already got a main commission, but they need those pre-sales. That's the business that we're in. We acquire, but we're always looking, we're not just acquiring off distributors' catalogues, we're also acquiring direct from producers, or sometimes via a distributor, when the thing is in production. So that, we've got it in good time, we can be part of the production, we can help it get made, I guess.
So it's really crucial for you, like many of the more linear broadcasters, should we say, that are coming and looking to complete their funding to make their show.
We're a relatively small broadcaster. I mean, we're free-to-air broadcaster, public broadcaster, but in the Australian landscape, relatively small, and that means that we can't say, we'll buy the whole show, we'll give you the whole production budget for this, much as we would like to do that. I would like to do that. But what we can do is say, so you have Curiosity Stream or France 5 or Spiegel, or there are other broadcasters that are buying, that can put in 10% of a budget, and we're in that kind of territory. Maybe not quite 10%, but we're in that sort of territory where we can join with others with a similar taste in these, if you like, international factual programs. I'm talking really about the factual market rather than the single documentary market. But we're also in that too.
Right.
We're also looking for those too. Those films too.
The streamers have obviously changed the game when it comes to a lot of the mega docs and feature docs, etc. How have the streamers and these the streaming wars affected the co-production market?
Yeah, it's a very good question. There is, I mean, it depends on the public broadcaster. I think there are some public broadcasters that are strong enough in their home territory that, if you're making that sort of film, you would only go to France Télévisions or Arte or Rai. But it has changed it, I think. I think the big change is it's turned the head of producers and filmmakers. And they're going, no, I want to do an HBO series. I want to do a Netflix series. I want to do an Amazon series. And so the development effort is going there. And I think when people, and they obviously have every right to and should do that, will wait for the big ticket, Netflix original that they think is around the corner, rather than what I was describing, which can be a longer process of cobbling together 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 partners. And I understand why you might want to wait for Netflix, but you'd be, you're giving away all your rights and you'll never see your program again.
Yeah.
No, forgive me if anybody from Netflix is listening. I don't mean it like that. I know Netflix works in many different ways and also obviously acquires and licenses. But, there is in working direct with channels and just pre-selling rights to a territory is a different way of working. Netflix, do obviously work with public broadcasters. Haven't worked with SBS yet, but there's always going to be a time, I'm sure. They do work with public broadcasters and have done fantastically for the ecosystem by bringing in that extra funding and scaling up programs that public broadcasters have been doing.
Well, it's going to be really interesting, I guess, to see how that develops as well, because we've all seen, Netflix's subscriber numbers falling. There's talk about them moving into AVOD as well, and the many different models that we're seeing a lot of the big media companies coming to the market with. One question about co-production. We know it's going to take longer to get a co-production with, 4 or 5 partners together to get that made. But what I've always wondered is, for a company like SBS, or who's maybe putting in up to 20% of the budget, let's say, or maybe more, maybe less, but let's less. Okay, all right.
This isn't telly, is it? I can't just show it in my hand, but it's slightly less. Yeah.
Okay, so how does that work from an editorial perspective? Because you've obviously got this central idea that the producer's got to tell a story in a particular way, and you'll presumably have an initial commissioning broadcaster, maybe in that market.
I think, we are, pretty small team doing all of these purchases and pre-buys and everything. My other 2 colleagues are in Sydney, and I think that's why we look for things that have been commissioned or are either on a subject that the producer's done before, it's a team that's worked together before, or it's talent that we've done
isn't
before.
It, actually?
And we will say, well, we kind of know what this is going to be like, so you get on with it, and we trust you to deliver. Often when there's a distributor involved, that helps too, because the distributor knows, we're not going to mess around with this. It's not going to be, we want this thing to sell because we know what these buyers want. So I love getting involved in editorial discussions. It's not always necessary. And I think for a poor producer having to field 4 or 5 points of view, it can be an absolute nightmare, and they would rather just a set of notes at the beginning and some clear parameters of what we're all expecting. The thing about, is it an elephant? Everybody has a different view of what an elephant actually is.
Yeah.
I can't remember what that is if they're blind or something. But anyway, I think it's the same thing with co-productions. A lot of the partners will go, oh yes, it's going to be this sort of thing. And oh yes, it's only the producer and the filmmaker who really know, actually.
Yeah. But as you say, if you've got an idea of perhaps what a particular commissioner at a particular broadcaster will want, and then you see the other partners involved and the producer and maybe the distributor, and that gives you the added level of comfort.
You've got it. That's exactly how it works. We know There is, you'd call it a house style. It's almost a house tone, I suppose, for different broadcasters. Obviously, I don't know all of them, and they do change, and people can make very different films. But we have a sense of what works for our audience. We go for that. We can make mistakes like everybody, but in picking things, that haven't been made and trying to guess what they're going to be like on paper. But of course we can make mistakes, but you have to have these open conversations with people, don't you? And I don't expect the producer to know what SBS is as a channel or what our particular editorial mindset is. It's more up to us to communicate that, I think.
One last question, Krishan. So when it comes to shows that you've become involved with through Sunnyside, can you give us a couple of recent examples of shows that you've come to Sunnyside and you've been pitched on the opportunity to pre-buy or to get involved as a co-production partner? Can you give us some recent examples of shows that you've been involved with?
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes success has many fathers. I never quite know, because I go to quite a lot of these events, which one I see these things at, and some of them are pitched at many of them. But one example, a company called Gédéon Programme, who are one of France's biggest production companies, they did a film which I think was pitched at the last one before the lockdown, so in 2019, the last Sunnyside, about Pompeii. It was a big two-parter on Pompeii. It was based on original archaeology, but had the sort of big, good-looking reconstruction of the aftermath of a volcanic explosion that we all love. And that's something that we met here, and we went, yep, that's going to work for us. And it came through their distributor, Terra Nova. But, this is a good place both to meet the people, but also to be, if you like, pitched a project in the best conditions, because people are preparing these pitches. They're thinking about them. They're really pre-marketing the show that you're going to get. This is a good place to do that. You get a buzz, I suppose. The titles feel buzzy, and those are the ones that you remember. There's probably many others. Obviously, in the last couple of years, we've been all trying to do it on Zoom, where you don't get the same feeling about a programme. I've just spent the last couple of days in the EBU, European Broadcasting Union pitches. We have a documentary group. Australia is a member of the EBU, an associate member, and producers and the commissioning broadcasters come and pitch those programmes. And it's great. You meet the team, you really understand what the film or the series is about.
And that happened here? That
happened here, yeah.
Rochelle, before the Sunnyside started?
That's right. So it was on the Saturday and the Sunday. 25, 30 of us around a table, people pitching. Was a good event, and lots of pre-buy interest raised for those shows. So. I said show again. I always try and stop myself saying show there. Films and documentaries and series. That's what they are.
Krishan, thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed chatting to you and understanding a little bit about SBS and what you're looking for and what works for you. All the best for Sunnyside.
Well, all the best to... I don't know if you're ever going to move from this deck chair, looking at these couple of catamarans and... If anybody's got yacht envy, this is probably quite a good place or a bad place to come. But I hope you enjoy the rest of the market as well.
I'll do my very best. Thanks, Krishan. My second guest on this week's Sunny Side of the Dock special is Mikael Osterby, Head of Factual Acquisitions at Swedish public broadcaster SVT. Welcome to TellyCast, Mikael.
Thank you very much.
It's wonderful to have you here for a quick chat. You're a very busy man, so thank you for foregoing your lunch to have a sit down and a chat.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start right at the beginning of SVT. Now, that's, as I say, it's public broadcaster. Can you give us an idea of what kind of factual programming plays well with Swedish audiences?
First of all, I mean, if you have many UK listeners, SVT is like the BBC, very, very, similar. We have two channels, big ones, and then we have a BBC 4 and a BBC 3, but it's SVT, of course. And the biggest difference is that we don't have as much money as the BBC, so we need to do more acquisitions. So I'm handling the factual group. We are doing around 1,000 hours, 1,000 episodes of acquisitions, co-productions, and pre-buys a year. So it's a lot. So the question of what works, it's a long answer for that. We are buying the things that you see on the popular list all over the world. We are involved, or we buy them later on. You can say for prime time, it's always, because we're a public service broadcaster, there is science, one-offs, there is history, one-offs, history of Julius Caesar. There is natural history, the landmarks from BBC. We produce them ourselves, some of it, but the landmarks we can't afford doing Frozen Planet 2, so we buy that. But also, I need to say, we do a lot of reality, Married at First Sight, First Dates, Antiques Roadshow, stuff like that. The ones that work best is when we do, like for Married at First Sight, there is a Swedish one, locally produced in Swedish. We do the format, 10 hours, but then there are 40 more weeks that we can buy the New Zealand version, or we can buy the UK version or Dutch version.
Okay, so you establish the format, and then actually, if there's enough interest in it, then you can actually you bring in all the international versions.
Yeah, because if the question of what works in this new brave world of crazy competition out there, what works is the things that has been promoted, the titles that are known. And acquisition do not have, the marketing budget is slim, so to speak. Using the format and all the promotion that one gets is a super smart way of getting your brand, or Married at First Sight, Antiques Roadshow, or whatever, known. And then you just ride on that kind of way.
And how does local production, like the format local production, then work? Do you produce yourselves at SVT? Do you have your in-house production?
We have in-house, but it depends. It's like the BBC. We're doing more than 50% outside the building. We have to do that. So we have production companies doing it. Sometimes we do it ourselves, but...
We talked about co-productions a little bit, and obviously that is key. And coming to Sunnyside for the first time, that's something that is really front and centre, co-productions. Lots of broadcasters coming together, making shows together. And just yesterday, or this week, for listeners, they're listening this on Thursday when we come out, you've just announced a major factual global co-funding initiative with 6 other broadcasters. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and the thinking behind it?
What it is that it's a joint venture, like a jury of everything, from Channel 4 to France Television to SVT, saying that, okay, let's bring in some money here. People can apply, and we will have a process, and we will, find the winner in December at World Congress. That project will be produced. I've located, I have...
So it's one project. Is it one project that we talk?
To be honest, I think so. It could be more.
Okay.
So I have allocated money for that already, so I need to do that. But I'm just saying, there will be 6 commissioners reading all, what's coming in. So it's a smart way of getting your project known. That's for the producers. For us, it's competition out there. We need the best projects, and for us, it's a way to make it easier for producers with great projects to talk to us, and we will, spread it to 6 commissioners at the same time.
I think they're all public broadcasters, aren't they?
Public broadcasters.
Okay, and the list is France TV, CBC Canada, ZDF Germany, Channel 4 you mentioned, ORF in Austria, and ABC as well. So to me, that makes perfect sense. Everybody chips in. It's going to be presumably a budget that's on the same level as a major streamer might be able to stump up.
That's the plan, yes.
Okay. It's difficult enough getting a commission from one broadcaster. So how does that jury work? Because 7 public broadcasters. I mean, it sounds a brilliant idea, but that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Well, of course, that's always a big kind of issue. But we have worked together before. We know each other. We know the editorial lines. So we picked the the channels with great concern. So we know that we can get, we can agree. But of course, it's always that thing with co-productions that somebody wants that and somebody wants that, and we don't want that story and so. But for me, being the smallest one, I'm used to being very, very flexible. So,
Right,
yeah.
right. Okay. I attended the first pitch session, which was the science pitches yesterday at Sunnyside, which is one of the things that Sunnyside has become really well known for. And that was really interesting, just listening to, I think it was Nova in the US Channel 4, France TV, and a couple of other broadcasters being pitched what I thought were, fantastic projects, but it was just getting that consensus across those broadcasters was really interesting. And I can see there has to be something that does it have to be globally significant, do you think? I mean, in terms, if it was a science project, for example, is it, for example, a new discovery in Pompeii, let's say, or a globally important discovery, science discovery or something like that? Is that the sort of thing that might have that commonality across all of those 7 broadcasters that would work?
Yeah, seriously, yes,
Yeah.
I guess. It has to be of interest for their audience, and it can't be too local. I know we've already been getting some pitches, and I know they talked about it yesterday. It could be local, because one of my that's been pitched is Viking women.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
That's a very local story, But everybody is interested in Vikings, and if we have a Viking women story, what happened? She was a warrior, that could be shown all over the world. But of course, it can't be too niche locally, so it's going to be most certain global stories. But, you're in TV, when you hear that great story, even if it's about whatever, Japanese, small villages, but it's a great story, and there's science there, and there's history there. And if you can find a title that sounds interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that I noticed yesterday. It was like, some of the commissioners talked about, well, if you spin it like this, then actually it grabs me much more for my audience, and it crystallizes the idea a little bit more. The title is kind of, well, I wouldn't say it's half the story,
I'd say it's half. It's
Yeah?
half, yeah, because there's so many choices out there now. I mean, back in the days when we were big and everything was linear, when they were just sitting there, I had the biggest platform in Sweden. People just, millions of people just floated into my program. Wonderful. Now it's on the SVT Play, the online service. They have 1,000 choices when they have entered my platform. Before that, they have 10 platforms, Netflix or HBO, whatever. Title is super important.
Yeah, it's like shorthand, isn't it? It's like a newspaper headline. Think about it like a newspaper headline. What's going to make you stop and read? And there was a famous newspaper quote. It's called like a toast dropper. If you're reading the newspaper in the morning and it makes you so incredibly excited, you drop your toast when you're reading it. That's the sort of thing.
I mean,
we need
seriously,
to
and of course, I'm a public service broadcaster. I will have feature documentaries, that will not make it big, but that are really important and relevant. Of course, we will have that. But for the majority of my programs, they need to find an audience because they are there to entertain or to be, So title is super important. Yes.
Okay, well, that's one big tip for everybody to think about your title. Thinking about outside of this co-production initiative, for SVT principally, you're looking for pre-buys, acquisitions and co-productions. You work in all of those 3 areas. Can you give us an idea of, what the balance is between those 3 when you're acquiring content?
Acquisitions is the big part. Absolutely. I mean, I'm doing 1,170 episodes last year. 80%.
Right.
But I'm saying perhaps 70 because a lot of the pre-buys, which is the next big thing, are series that we know. I mean, we're series second, third series. I mean, we pre-buy and pre-buy and pre-buy. So it's a lot of, for going in for Married at First Sight. We talked about that earlier. I mean, we pre-buy them. But co-productions, that's the big money, and everybody wants to be a co-production. We are not doing that many. So I'll do around 100, 200 pre-buys and perhaps 20 to 40 co-productions. Sometimes I call it co-finance, meaning I pay like 10 or 20% of the budget, but I don't produce. I don't have a production company connected to it. If not, I need to, because the French people I work with need a Swedish company doing something for some funding. Then we do it. So it's complicated, but acquisition is the big part. And, it's also the easiest part, because then you can watch the program. But these days, when it comes to acquisition, most of the stuff has been bought.
Is it mainly from distributors that you're making those acquisitions, or do you buy direct from producers as well?
We do both, but pre-buy or co-production is direct to the producer. Acquisition is mainly from a distributor.
Yeah.
Well, it happens. But I also have to say, because you were talking about how do you agree with 7 broadcasters. SVT, we are Sweden small, 10 million people. So what we do to make it work to our Swedish audience is that we ask for editing rights. I will be paying you acquisition fees, but then I'll spend more money on making a 3-hour documentary into 1 hour. And then I exchange some of the experts to Swedish ones. And I have
localizing it.
I'm localizing. So that's a way for me to do that. Also, another story that perhaps we were doing the global doc, we have a similar thing going on in Sweden and in Scandinavia. It's not a jury, we don't have any funds, but we call it Scandinavian one-stop shop. If you're a producer, say, you want some money, but you don't want to make 4 or 5 calls to Wiley, DR, NRK, and SVT. You call me, or you call the person at DR, Anders. Perhaps it's Frederick at NRK that You make that call, you say, would you be interested? And Frederick calls me. And then we meet every week and talk about the projects that we've been pitched. So we can spread the word and be fast and quick. Because now, the competition is global. So we need to be bigger. So that's also a way to, be on the market.
This is probably a massive oversimplification, so please put me right. So if you think about the Scandinavian audiences, they are similar but different, I suppose, in a way.
They're quite similar. We have editorially, we are very similar, yes.
When it comes to the decisions you're making and the meetings you're having here at Sunnyside this week, is there a particular window that you're buying for right now? Is it sort of in a year's time, that Q3 in 2023 that you're buying for, or how do you make those decisions for shows in the future?
Most of this fall is full, so we're buying for next year. If you're in the natural history business, we are pre-buying for 25. The production
takes so much longer.
So, but I'd say no. But I'm open. But if you have something that's really good, I could put it. It could be for August this year. If you have something on Tutankhamun for November, I'd love that. I'm sorry, we just closed on Munich, the 50 years of the Olympic. It just happened now. So we are a few weeks from now with a few of them, because you need to be able to say which one will be the best one. And then we're, natural history is 3 years ahead. So that's the time span.
Right. We're here pretty much in most parts of the world, not all. Pandemic is the worst of it, hopefully, touch wood. There's some wood there. I'm just touching that for the listeners. Obviously, there was a certain amount of disruption, less so in factual, but in some areas of factual, it was really hit, like natural history, for example. How has that affected your programming decisions over the last year, and is it still affecting your programming decisions now?
When it happened, there was a lack of programs. We had to do something, and then we started to. So that happened.
How did you deal with that?
You know what we did, which actually is interesting, because what we did, we thought nobody can travel, so we went back. I'm a public service broadcaster. I haven't been buying, like those daytime travel shows. So I did that. You can't travel now. So we had this, the marketing was like, SVT takes you out traveling.
Traveling from your sofa or something.
Like that. So we started buying that. We haven't been buying that for a long time. And that worked really well. And we thought just a pandemic thing, okay? But it's been continuing, and it works really well on the iPlayer. So now we're actually, so when you ask me, has that affected me in any way? Yeah, we're actually looking for warmer, kind of friendlier programs about traveling.
Okay, so friends traveling, maybe whatever travel experiences or spins on the
Yeah, and it doesn't, very, very kind of commercial. It doesn't have to be, welcome to the Museum of Louvre. No. Hey, let's have a sangria in the sun. That kind of works really well for us. We are looking for the characters that you want to travel with, because that's the thing. You need to find that person, that personality that you want to spend time with.
And do they already have to be known to a Swedish audience?
No, because we haven't been buying them. We could, go for a hostile takeover and buy our local competitors. But no. So right now, we tried Gino. I think he's on the UK TV.
That's right.
Did well. Julia Bradbury.
Yep.
Worked. For instance.
And they were just engaging personalities that translated to a Swedish audience.
The last time we did was with Michael Palin back in the, was that 19s or 10 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
Then we stopped. But now we're back.
All right, that's interesting. Well, anybody listening who's got some travel programming, then Michael might be your man.
But the thing is also what's happening right now, it's not about the pandemic. It's about how the TV business has changed, because on linear, everything had to be warm and nice and cozy, okay? And public service is more assertive. It's more about special interest and knowledge, so we call it red and warm, blue and cold. Okay, the streamers, they needed the decision makers, so they had a lot of programs that were assertive, great documentary stories and science, not really science, but assertive programming. A lot of the competition that the public broadcasters are experiencing right now, they come from different business models that exist within the subscription world. So we've realized that for the last 3 years that we have a lot of competition right now from commercial platforms on our territory. So now we're still there, but we are moving to a warmer space with travels and friendly and carefree. So that's happening at SVT. So before, when they all the only thing that I bought was science history and current affairs, we still buy that a lot. We still co-produce that. We are heading to classic lifestyle, classic warm, nice, friendly TV.
Obviously, the pandemic has been a part of this because it boosted the streamer penetration across the world. The way that you're competing is it's changed the type of programming that you're looking for. It's really interesting.
And the local TV stations, they've lost so much because their business model is dying. So that's not really a competition anymore. So before we had to compete with them, 10 years ago, but they've lost all their money, so that it's not going that well for them. So now we're going for their kind of genres. We're still core public service. We still have...
You have a remit to fulfill.
So, we haven't left that area, but we are doing more of that. So don't be surprised if I buy that back catalogue show that you wouldn't think that I would.
All right.
5 years ago.
That's really interesting. Michael, thank you for foregoing your lunch again. I hope you get a quick sandwich before your next pitch meeting or your next meeting. But thank you very much for spending time with us on TellyCast. I'd love to be able to, chat to you again at some time in the future.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me. It's fun.
Well, that's about it from a roasting La Rochelle and a very enjoyable Sunnyside of the Dock. Thanks to Philippe, Mathieu and the team for making TellyCast so welcome. Don't forget to visit TellyCast.com, where we have all the content from the TellyCast Content Funding Festival together in one place for free. Just register at TellyCast.com. Next week's show is the last in the series before we take a break for the summer. And we're back in France and back in Cannes for the Cannes Lions Festival of Creativity. Until next week, as always, stay safe.
Global producers, distributors and rights holders, why are you waiting for license fee payments from your productions, both new and back catalogue? Pipe buys your entertainment receivables and turns it into upfront capital immediately. Pipe can help you pull forward up to 5 years worth of contracted license fees from all the major streamers and broadcasters, so you can use the capital to produce more, acquire more, finance more, and grow your business on your own terms. Sign up today at pipe.com/entertainment. That's pipe.com/entertainment and start fast forwarding your receivables now.